This is Skip 101, brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. You drive back to South Central, and then what took off? What
Well,
inspired Straight Outta Compton then?
well, by the time I get back, we've done a few singles. We've
Yeah.
done, Easy E's career is rolling with Boys in the Hood.
Yeah.
He had another song called Eight Ball Rolling.
And by the way, you wrote Boys in the Hood
Yeah,
for him, right?
yeah,
Okay.
I
All
wrote
right.
those songs,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I had the NWA song. So we had a few hits, local hits that were starting to bubble across the country. And so they was doing shows here and there, and finally, stumbled on a record deal with Priority. And so by the time I came back, it was time to work on the Easy E solo album, Easy Does It.
Okay.
So we just went straight to the studio and started working on that. And it seemed like as soon as we finished that record, we started on the NWA project and
Yeah.
started working straight out of Compton.
Okay.
So I came back and it was starting to roll downhill for us when I got back.
Okay. So you wrote most of, if not all of that album, right? The Straight Outta Compton album.
I wrote a lot of it. I
Yeah.
got to give credit to the DLC.
Okay.
I got to give credit to MC Ren.
Yes.
It was a collaborative effort on that end, but I wrote a lot of those songs for sure.
Well, and the title song, which you
Yeah,
kick off, man, it's all time, all
yeah. I
time.
mean,
But hey, it is revolutionary, man. At that time, the lyrics, the message, it's way out there, but it found a huge audience because people were ready to hear that. And I think black and white people were ready to hear that, because I sure have a lot of white friends who just live by that album.
well, at the end of the day, music had a lot of harnesses on it,
Yep.
and people knew that. People knew that the artists were, keeping it ultra clean for whatever reasons. They wanted more spins, they wanted to go pop, they
Yeah.
wanted to be on
Yeah.
TV, they wanted their songs to be in commercials. So, they harnessed a lot of things. You had some artists that was, like Rick James, who was starting to say, hey man, I want to be myself up here.
Yeah, he did.
But still, you know, uh, he called it Mary Jane, where we called it, straight up weed or
Yeah.
or whatever. So we had, I think, taken off the shackles and taken off the
Yeah.
chain and let artists be themselves wherever that is. It could be as um, as extreme as an Eminem, or as tame as any other artist that didn't want to go that far. It
Yep.
was more boundaries. There was no more guardrails where you had to stop here
Mm.
because you were going too far. And I think when it comes to art, people like that. People like to know that art is not harnessed, that it's
That's
uh,
right. Yeah.
pure expression in some way, shape, or form.
By the way, the very last line on Straight Outta Compton is, "Damn, that shit was dope," and
Yeah,
and it was it. I don't even know who says the line. It just
that's
sort of
Dre.
pops. Who do you remember who recorded that line?
That's Dr. Dre.
That's Dr. Dre. I wasn't
Yeah,
sure, and it just and it hit me. It connected with me because yeah, it was.
you
And
know what? Funny, Skip.
yeah.
That was a controversial line in the studio
Oh yeah.
because it was controversial because we knew the song was great and we knew the song was a banger and that it had a lot of
It's a
energy.
banger.
But I don't think nobody ever said, that they song was dope at
Mm-mm.
the end of it. I think
No.
Carrots One has a line that says, Fresh for 87, you suckers, so that was about it as far as somebody
Yeah,
finishing the song and
I
telling
know.
you this shit was just dope,
That's it.
Just her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it just, listen, that track, to me, I listened to it again last night because it's like emblazoned in my psyche, but it has such energy and momentum and power to it ultimately. And I can't even describe it, but it just explodes through the microphone. And you set that tone because you come hot out of the box, man. And
Yeah.
I think you inspired your mates on that one. Your bandmates. I think they followed the tone. Like, God, if he's going to do this, we got to go.
Yeah, I hope so. We were all in competition with each other,
Absolutely.
friendly competition on,
Yeah.
Dre has set a tone of, if you're not hot, if your lyrics are not hot, you're not making it on the record.
No.
And if you listen to Straight Outta Compton, there's records where I'm not there, or there's records where Easy's not there.
Yeah.
You just never, you had to come with it, or he would pull you off the track like it was nothing. So
Yeah.
everybody, was,
Yeah.
maxed out when it came to
Maxed.
trying to be creative as you can and not taking one line for granted. And so you can feel that. And back then, we used to record off tape, 2-inch tape, about this thick. And DJ Quick says something I think is profound,
Hmm.
that back then, even the atmosphere in the room would get onto the tape.
Yeah. I
So,
got it. Yeah.
dealing with the magnetism of
Absolutely.
these frequencies. So even the vibe of the
It's the
room
vibe.
would make it onto the tape.
Right.
And that's what you're catching, the vibe of people just wanting to explode creative wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How, how did your parents react to that? What were they good with this, or what? Like, how old were you then? 18 or 19 on Straight Eyes? I guess you're right in that ballpark.
Yeah, I was like 18.
Yeah.
18. My mom's asked me, why did I have to come like that? Why
Yeah.
did I
I understand.
use that kind of language? And I like, well, we rapping, we want to get our point across, and this is the way people talk. And so we don't want to be fake. And, she, she understood it more once the checks start coming in, and she
Yeah.
saw this is
No, I
a
understand.
viable way to make a living. But,
Yep.
but she's a mother. She don't want to hear her son. I'm pretty sure her church friends gave her a lot of grief, till she pulled up in that Mercedes Benz, and then they
Yep.
probably,
Well
stopped
said.
giving her grief. But they was happy I wasn't on the street, Skip. They was happy
Absolutely.
that I
Yeah.
wasn't banging and going to jail, shooting people, on drugs, getting arrested. They was happy I was doing something other than those things, because it was just prevalent, in our neighborhood.
And by the way, your whole F the police message, you're way ahead of your time. I mean, look at what has transpired since. So
Yeah.
you're cutting edge, man. You're breaking through before a lot of people broke through. You're saying what needed to be said, and you're pioneering it, man. You're inventing this space.
We felt like our backs was against the wall, and we felt like, it was nothing we could legally do, nothing we was physically, gonna do, what I mean, like,
Right.
unless you want to be killed, what I'm saying. So what we had was the music,
You
and
did.
we put our feelings on the music, and we was really surprised that a lot of people around the country or around the world, you know, have their problems with authority, and there's the same issues, so you know it reverberates. The feelings are something it seemed like the world been wanting to say but didn't really know how.
Yep.
And we created a song where you can release that frustration if you have it, without doing something physical.
Did you have personal issues with the police in your neighborhood at various points?
Yeah, we had issues. They would come sweat us.
Yep.
Been doing that, man. We was kids playing football on the street, on our bikes, making ramps, flipping on mattresses, water balloon fights. You know what I'm saying? It's no reason to sweat us, but they will still,
Yep,
come
I got it.
through and just and come with the intimidation stuff. And when you really look back on it too, a guy who wanted to be a cop killed my sister, and I had a problem. I had a problem because of that.
Yeah, you
You know
did.
that that's probably why a 17-year-old kid writes a song like that.
Okay.
Uh,
That's
it's a
deep.
mixture of a lot of different things.
Yeah.